Hey there guys, and welcome back. So we are on session 14, and that would be right here. So yesterday morning, this morning, 2 hours between the two. Got done right on time this morning, and that's good because I basically ran out of things to do aside from balancing on the colony demo. And next up, as the title says and as the description says for this one, we will be going into the map, but we'll talk about that more towards the end of the stream. So let me go ahead and kick you on over to VS Code, and I will start going through the stuff that changed. And honestly, it was not, I want to say it was not super a lot, but I guess it more or less was. Well, it was a good bit, I guess. No, I take it back. It really wasn't that much. I'm running through the GitHub, and it really was not that much. I'm actually... Probably shouldn't have taken me as long as it did to get through all this. I guess a lot of it, what slowed me down, was just brainstorming where I wanted to go. So let us start over at colony.js, wherever that is. There it is. And shop items, right? Just looking really quick if there's anything else to look at in... Nope, it's all just shop items. So, yeah, here's shop items right here. Let's see, looking at the change log. All right, we had... it looks like we had most of this in here. Okay, it looks like I changed basically how we went about the unlocks. I mean, everything after this point, rather. So... after the unlocks is what I meant to say. So previously this was if not unlock.length, add to list. I've changed that. So for armor and transports, I've been kicking around the idea of whether or not armor and transports should be stacking buffs or if they should actually be individual armor and transports. I'm under the impression in a dark room that it is actually stacking buffs. So you buy the basic armor, I forget what it's called, and then you buy the steel armor or the iron armor, and then the steel armor, etc. And you basically stack up the buffs from each of those armors. That's what I'm under the impression of. Same thing with the transports. I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong about it, but conceptually it doesn't make sense to just keep on stacking armor and stacking transports. Transports, I guess you could make an argument for. You know, basically just make a railroad train worth of transports, just tether them all together and get going. But it makes more sense to me that you just have a armor, you ditch your previous one when you get this one, and when you get your new one, and a transport, same deal, you're just upgrading. So in that case, the stuff in the shop, when we're deciding items in the shop, we want to make sure and check that we're not reselling to the player the same armor they already have, because that doesn't do anything. Technically, we could. Technically, we don't have to do this check, and if a player's stupid enough to buy something they already have, it's on them, I guess, but just to be nice, we're not going to show any armor that's in there. However, the way this is set up is, if you, for example, have level 2 armor, we'll just call it for sake of naming conventions. If you have level 2 armor, level 1 armor, in this case, will then be in the shop, and you could buy level 1 armor. The reason I set it up like that, and I did not create some kind of tier where, for example, right here we could say if the armor's ID, if the item, well, so if it's in armor, and if item.id or item. Oh no, because it's armor and transport, they don't have an armor and transport type. So yes, so item.id. So if item.id is less than or equal to player equipment armor.id, that's the other way we could do that, and that would be the tier, you know, that way you could never buy weaker armor. The reason I am not doing that is actually because I think that that's one of those fun little opportunities that someone could attempt where they get towards the end game, let's say, or they beat the game. I don't know how we're handling end game stuff right now, but they could, in theory, get towards the end game at the very least, and then say, okay, you know what? I think I'm strong enough. I'm going to actually, for the lulz, ditch my super powerful level 5 armor for level 1 armor. You know, I think that's just, it's nice to be able to leave that in, and if the player wants to do it, it's their call. It's their game. They can have fun the way they want. So that explains this bit right here. Okay, and then this is the other change I made. That's right. So items is no longer a list; it is now an object, and the object names will be item type, armor, weapon type, transport, and resource type. Those will be the keys in this items object. So then we got to make a list if it's not already in there. That's what this line is, in order to put the item into the correct list. And we're doing that because it's simpler to sort out the items on the other end, on the function that's calling shop items, whatever's calling that in order to display it, assumedly. That has an easier time of sorting out the items or grabbing just the items at once, for example. So that's why I went with that. Next up, let's see. Minor change in util is just a little note change. I added some more items. So over in items.json, actually, items.json, we added in a second tier of armor, and we added in a fourth resource. So if we hop over to English, those will have corresponding things. So here is the fourth resource, biomaterial. It's one of those things in a dark room. You got like scales and teeth and stuff like this. I'm going with biomaterial as your generic load level resource that you can randomly pick up. And then armor, I just added second tier of armor so that in the shop, in the demo, we can actually display an armor. Because again, your player starts out with basic armor. So if he already has basic armor, the armor slot would then be empty in the shop demo. And therefore, that doesn't exactly work as a demo, does it, if it's empty? So we added in the second armor, that way you can buy armors in the shop demo. So those are those changes. I added in some shop costs. So that was back over in items.json. All the shop costs were 0 before. I added in some shop costs here. We didn't add any other shop costs in. Again, as I wrote in the description for this video, balancing this demonstration is not really something I feel like doing right now. It's not particularly useful. It's not actually achieving anything. The demo's just there to show that the mechanics work in the game, or how the mechanics work too. So I just got a couple in here just so that when you buy resources, you actually they actually cost you something. I really should have also done food. I should have provisions, done a shop cost for provisions, but I didn't, so there. Here, we'll add everyone really quick. We'll go with 3 and 1. There we go. So you can exchange 1 biomaterial for 1 piece of food. So on to the colony demo. Looks like it is the last one we need to do. So colony demo. Where are you at? Not up here? Okay. Colony demo. Alright. So this was most of the stuff. So first off, let's start at the very top. If we're going to be buying items for our character, then we actually need a character. So we made one. The next thing is, because the screen is starting to get very congested, I actually changed this over to a tabbed system. So that means that demo box now has this flex container right here. And down here, where's the page setup? So resources are on the left hand side of the screen. That's on the left side of the flex container. And then on the right side of the flex container is this other demo pages. Well, actually, it's this div technically speaking, but we have demo pages up top. That is basically a navigation bar, and demo display, which is the actual container that all the demos go into as you page through them. So we wrote all this code to page through that stuff. Pretty simple, straightforward. Obviously, just grabbing our references here, but for each page in Meeple, Sectors, and Shops, we go ahead and add a navigation button, and then we also set that button up to display the page. And then as the as we initialize initialize, there we go, the different demos, they just got added to the demo display. And then, when we do set page, that will hide everything first, as you can see right here. So we hide everything, and then we just show the one that we want. We disable the button that is selected. We re-enable all the other buttons, etc. Pretty straightforward. So that is that change. And let's see. Again, pretty straightforward on all that. Just had to update everything to say demo display. For example, right where we at? Right here. So this used to be demo box. This got updated to demo display. So that's pretty straightforward. I also did some formatting, so stuff looked a little bit a little bit better. That's not that big of a deal. Going to the next reasonably large change, that would be the cost. So over here in sector upgrades, this used to be construct sector cost. Sector level cost is what I called this before. But you'll notice that nothing in here actually refers to sectors. These resources and quantities are actually in the exact same format as any other resource list, which means that we can actually pass anything we want into this, which is very useful when we're buying stuff from the shop. So this got changed to construct cost, which then the shop is able to use. Well, the shop could use it anyway, but it's more ambiguous so that when the shop calls it, it's not as weird. And now when you float over the buy button on the items, it will tell you how much they cost. Just like with the sector, when you float over it, it tells you how much the sector upgrade costs. So that is that. And then finally the shop. So down here in setup shop, there we go, shop setup. We did all this code. So obviously we have our box for the shop, which gets displayed by the button. And then this is one of those things I was talking about. So back to shop items now returns an object. So using object.entries to get the entry name. So weapon type, resource type, armor, transport, etc. And then items, the list of items. That way we can create a table for those items with a header, this H3, right, that says what it is. And we can also obviously dynamically create a reference to the body that we can refer to when we populate it right here with all the items. And then because the armor changes, the armor and the transport changes depending on what armor or transport you bought, we have this callback right here, which gets called right here, as you can see, after we purchase, so that it updates the armor and the transports to make sure that the armor and transports are accurate based on what the player has. Again, this is very straightforward. This is actually just a copy paste of up here, so that's no big deal. And I started running into, and it looks like it was just my computer. So I shut down my computer, and just for good measure, I blew it out for the first time in about a year. I blew the dust out of it. But the demo was starting to lag on me. So down here, as you can see, I changed it so that we only update the meeple box and the sectors box when they're actually selected. So when they're in the background, we do not actually go back in and edit those divs to represent where their timers are at, for example, until they become displayed. So that's what this is here. As it turns out, again, it may have just been my computer, it's been a long time since I've restarted it. So it may just be something, there was some process that was just stuck and hogging resources. Once I restarted my computer, this was not a problem. It was also weird because that only actually happened after I added biomaterial. So the shop was set up and all this pagination was set up, and it wasn't an issue. We weren't lagging at all. But then I added biomaterial and we started lagging. So again, likely just my computer, likely not the demo itself that was lagging me. But just for good measure, because you're not seeing the screens anyway, those now do not update if the is not visible, if the page itself is not visible. And then obviously down here at the very bottom, we set the page to Maplebox for good measure. Because technically speaking, I did not set any of these other boxes to display none when we set them up. So right here, shop box, this does not say display none. So technically all the boxes are visible up until the point we get to set page, at which point it hides everything and then only shows the meeple page. So that is all the changes. Again, that is it was a very light update this time. And that's kind of alright just because, okay, yeah, I do have it open right now, good. Just because we're about to transition over to doing the map. So we wouldn't really expect to have much else to do since we're so close to the end of what we're doing here on the demo. So let's hop over to the internets. And here is the demo. Hopping in here one last time. So I'll go ahead and swap these guys over to charge batteries as we're familiar with. Here's what we're talking about with the pagination. So as you can see, we're on the meeples page right now. And then we've got sectors and shop. So I click sectors. As you can see, that one grays out. The meeples is now available. And we're just displaying this. Again, meeples is not updating in the background. Well, the meeples themselves are, but the visible display is not for the time being, just to save on a little bit of processing. Again, probably not necessary, but as expected, all this stuff still works. And over onto shop. So this is the big new one, right? So here, as you can see, this just says item type. It's one of those things. This really should say items, but for the sake of a demo, it's not really necessary to change that. When we get into the actual game, then it would make more sense for this to say items instead of item types, and weapons instead of weapon types. So, but that's not where we're at right now. It's not really necessary to make that distinction. So let's go ahead and, as you can see, armor does not require anything, only the resources require stuff. So 1 biomaterial, 5 scrap, 5 biomaterial, and 30 batteries. So if we buy the beryllium armor, now you can see that we have the opportunity to switch back to the basic armor. So there's that. And then same thing with the transports. We don't have any transports now, I don't believe. Yeah. So now we have the lugger, so it's off the list. If I buy the brig, now the lugger goes back on the list. So that's working as expected. The rest of the stuff, we don't actually see the player character's inventory, so I didn't bother doing anything with that stuff. But we do see the resources, so if I start spending some of these batteries on biomaterial, as you can see, that came out of here. And we got some biomaterial in response, and now we can trade that in for scrap. As you can see, again, the balancing is not great right now. This is actually pretty similar balancing to a dark room, to be fair, where when you're buying resources in the shop, it absolutely sucks. It's like not worth it at all. But it is something. It is part of the demo. So that is everything. That is the colony demo complete. We can actually swap a bunch of these guys over to batteries because we don't need that much food generation. Again, we upgraded the residential sector, which got us more characters over time. So yeah, again, this does conclude the colony demo. That is all the functionality we need for the colony. So moving forward, we will be working on the map, getting the character around the map, random encounters. I don't know if I'll set up combat right now. That seems like something that is probably doesn't need to be demoed because we already have the combat demo over here, right? Just to demonstrate that combat actually functions. So probably not necessary to do combat in the map demo. However, we do have to do, for example, visiting places, so visiting landmarks, and then walking through dialogue trees. Well, they don't really have dialogue trees in a dark room, but you know, the sequential floors, I guess you'll say, of the dungeon or the town or the city or whatever it is that you get to pass through in order to clear it. So that will be, again, what we work on going forward, and once that is done, then we can start actually putting the game together. And at that point, it really does become a matter of balancing the game and making sure everything works. And we got to get a bunch more strings into here for the storyline. You know, once we start doing, actually that may just happen naturally as we're demoing the map, or at least we'll have the framework in place for it, but the map is going to need a lot of dialogue text in it. So that all needs to get entered. I am considering having an AI write it, to be perfectly honest. It's an idea. One of these things, back to a minimalist game and trying to get this done in hopefully under 80 hours. We are not at 40 hours yet. We are only at 14 times 2 is 28 hours. So we are nowhere near the max 80 hours that I wanted to spend on this. So we got plenty of time. But one of those things, being a minimalist game and being more or less a demo game, I guess I'll say, just a showpiece to demonstrate walking through designing something like this. I am not particularly invested in the whole entire adventure story of the game at the moment. Maybe at some point, maybe I decide, you know what, we'll write a proper adventure story for it. But I'm considering again, I mean, what I really would want is if we can get a small enough neural network, or whatever the NLPs use nowadays, you know, Lambda, whatever Google Lambda or whatever uses, something comparable. We get a small enough module for it and actually generate on the fly. That would be probably most interesting, so that every town's encounter is more or less generated on the fly, as opposed to having a giant database of strings that then gets randomly pulled from. It's an idea. I'll look into it. But anyway, for the time being, this has been the Meeple. I mean, I really should change this button to say Colony Demo. Yeah, we can do that right now. VS Code. Let's see. That, I believe, is in demos. Yeah. So we'll change this to Colony. And that to Colony. And ID. On-click target. Target is Colony Demo. Okay, cool. Yeah, we should be good there. So yeah. So if we hop back over to the internets, there we go. Start Colony Demo, and it works. So yep, that has been, as I said, for the 4th or 5th time yet now, the conclusion to the Colony Demo, and on to the map demo. Look forward to it, and hope you've been enjoying this walkthrough of this game design, this very minimalist game design. And I hope you keep on tuning in. And as always, I hope you have a great and wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're in the world. And I will catch you next time.